Welcome everybody to the War and Peace Baseball Podcast. I'm here today with Ray Estrada and Alex Rudy. I'm Alex Uwe. How are you guys doing today? Were you guys ready to talk some fantasy baseball?
Let's do it.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, we did not have a show last week. Had a little break with the All-Star break there, but there's plenty to talk about, plenty to do to bolster your teams going forward here. And we got plenty of trades too. That's always fun. Real life MLB trades. So we'll go and start with the most. This might be the biggest trade we've seen so far, and that's the Yankees and White Sox made a deal recently, which involved Todd Frazier and David Robertson and Tommy Kahnle going over to the Yankees, and White Sox took a bunch of prospects back and Tyler Clippard. Thank God we got rid of Tyler Clippard. So what are we thinking about this trade so far? What are the early indicators here that look good for either side?
I think almost every analysis has said that's a pretty good trade for both sides largely. I think the Yankees win just by getting rid of Tyler Clippard because, I mean, he is atrocious. As much as I had high hopes for him this season, and his peripherals are misleading, I would say. But, I was really, really tied to Blake Rutherford. He's a top 30 MLB prospect. Yankees drafted him in the first round last year. He's doing well, but not outstanding at high A. But he's an athletic guy. He's still only 20 years old. And, all signs show him to being a great outfielder in the White Sox future. But that said, I've really come around to this trade. The more I've seen so many, as a Yankees fan, so many analysts just give a really positive review for it. Kahnle is outstanding from everything I've seen. Seems like to be one of the most underrated relief pitchers in baseball this year. I think all Yankee fans know and love David Robertson. He's had a very good bounce back year after a not great first year with the White Sox. And, Todd Frazier's been pretty poor the past season and a half with the White Sox, but the power is still there. He's still a good glove. If he doesn't work out, his contract is up at the end of the year anyways, and it's not like the Yankees need a long-term option at third base with Gleyber Torres coming through. So I didn't really want the Yankees to get one of their top prospects unless they got a good, solid rotation piece. But you know what? This is a pretty good return. It's hard to really complain, and they have so much prospect depth with their outfielders anyways. There's this guy named Bryce Harper who should be up with the Yankees in a couple of years. So
He's pronounced Royce Hooper.
Yeah, so and I think, Cashman hasn't lost a trade in a while, so I think this was a great move to try to secure at least a wild card spot. I don't really see the Yankees not making the playoffs and bearing a really bad collapse because their bullpen went from giving up the most blown saves in the league to, I think, arguably the best in the majors after this, as long as Chapman and Betances' controls get to at least acceptable levels by September.
Yeah, and I mean, from a fantasy aspect too, with this trade, the big losers are obviously David Robertson. He's not going to be closing games anymore, and basically lose all saves from him, so we got to dump him. And, I think the biggest winner from this trade is actually Yoan Moncada, who was called up basically right away once the trade was made. He is, he's up. I think he's up for good now. The White Sox have no reason to send him back down unless he just, Byron Buxton's it up. But I don't see him doing that. Moncada's a really, really talented player. He's going to provide a lot of speed at the very least, which is, that's what every fantasy owner is looking for at this point. It's I need more stolen bases. Well, look for Moncada. He's still available in plenty of leagues.
Can I add
he needs to be owned at this
one more thing
Yeah.
about the White Sox?
Mm-hmm.
I do agree with you. Moncada is an unbelievable player. We saw him in the futures game, and he has almost no bust potential. I mean, he should be one of the best players in the majors, and even as soon as next year. But they also now have 10 top 100 prospects, depending on your rankings,
Jesus,
which is pretty unbelievable. It's been done a couple times, arguably, depending on your rankings, of course, in recent memory. But, I think the Cubs we're the last one to have it. I'm not positive though, because I know MLB Reddit did a post about it listing him. But if you're a White Sox fan, I understand if you're frustrated that this core that seemingly had so many good assets couldn't really win any games, which is hard to believe. But at the same time, they should definitely be the best team in this division in like 3 or 4 years, and they have a manager who's willing to spend more on them than the Chicago Bulls. So I'd be pretty excited.
Yeah, and I think one other thing about Moncada from a fantasy point of view is that I think he did get the start at second base his first game up, and I think again tonight if they did play today. But hopefully he will be playing second base for the most part, but he could also be playing third base. Frazier's gone, and they could do some interesting things there. So keep an eye on where he's playing, where he's going to be eligible, all that stuff. So let's go ahead and move on to another big trade that was made recently. JD Martinez was sent to the Diamondbacks for virtually nothing. The Tigers got a few prospects from a very weak Diamondbacks farm system. None of them relevant this year and might not be relevant at all going forward. But JD Martinez in the desert, what are we thinking about this?
Well, I think besides the fact that he sat out today after getting hit in the hand yesterday, I think JD Martinez going to the Hitters Park in Phoenix is I don't see how it isn't a plus. And I agree with you that the Tigers got nothing for JD Martinez. And then I feel like they panicked thinking they weren't going to re-sign him and they had to get a deal done. But I think there were more people, or there were better offers on there. But JD Martinez having a really good year this year. Hopefully that hand isn't an issue, too much of an issue going forward. But if you have him, I'd be excited with a change of scenery, especially if he's going to be playing not just in Phoenix, but also up in Denver, in that thin air. So yeah, I'd stay invested in JD Martinez.
Yeah, I mean, he was, doing really well when he was on the field this season. There's a lot to like with him. I think it was tricky for the Tigers because there's not a lot of teams that are looking for like a full-time right field replacement.
Apparently, only Indians were in. So.
Oh really?
Yeah, it's hard because you can't trade JD Martinez somewhere he's not going to play every day because nobody's going to take him if they know they're not going to be able to play him every day. I don't know. It's a weird situation. I am a little curious about the home away splits. I want to see if there's any disparity because he was a really good hitter at home considering the ballpark conditions. It was a really big ballpark that he was in there in Detroit, but it's not concerning in any way. His OPS is actually about like 90 points higher, but again, like even an 855 road OPS the last 3 seasons is not anything to panic about. So I did want to throw that out there too. He didn't have any success really before he went to the Tigers, so it's something to keep in mind. I like to keep an eye on those things. So yeah, that's all there. Let's take a little. We'll talk about some other trades here, but I want to talk about the closer situations more so. With a few teams that were dealing recently. The first team we'll talk about are the Nationals, who acquired a couple Oakland A's relievers, Sean Doolittle and Ryan Madsen. I don't know how much you guys know about them, but what do you think about their situation going forward? Do you think one of these guys is going to get more save opportunities than the other, or do you think it's going to be kind of an even split over there?
Go ahead.
They gave Doolittle the first save opportunity I just saw. That's all I was going to add. So,
okay.
He's younger, he gets more team control, so it makes sense for them to set him up as the closer going forward.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Doolittle's going to be the main guy. Then again, I maybe Dusty Baker's going to work different than. Is Bob Melvin still the manager in Oakland?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, okay.
Nobody really cares anymore.
Yeah, so he might work a little different, might go a little even. But I mean, they got a good 1-2 punch for the bullpen, but still, There's still the Nationals, so who knows? But I'd say I give the edge to Doolittle in terms of saves.
Yeah, and I mean, I think I am curious what the ninth inning looked like for the Nationals in that first save opportunity. I have a feeling they'll be smart and use Doolittle against lefty heavy lineups, and use Madsen when in basically every other case, because Madsen's been good. So I think Ryan Madsen might be worth the own. It's really hard to say. Sean Doolittle health wise is not very reliable. That's the drawback there. I give up on any other relief pitchers that were already in Washington, like Albers and Coda Glover, who I think is still injured. Yeah, let's talk about the A's too, because on the other end of that deal, they got back Blake Trinan, and they are still holding on to Santiago Casilla, who could be on the move as well. Everybody could be on the move at this point, but that closer situation there has belonged to Casilla for a while, but Blake Trinan is a guy who could maybe benefit from a fresh environment, might be able to sneak in some saves. What do you guys think about the A's? And do you think it's worth even owning any A's relief pitchers at this point?
Unless you're desperate, no.
Yeah, and I think the case is similar for the White Sox, who also traded two of their best relievers. We knew it was going to happen, but at this point, their bullpen is really weak. Who's going to get saves for them? Tyler Clippard? I don't think so. Unless they, really, really have some major head trauma and want to use him in the ninth inning. But unless they're intentionally trying to throw any games that they happen to have a lead in, White Sox are not going to have enough leads to be worth owning a closer for them anyway. I have a feeling. So not a huge deal there, but keep in mind Robertson is basically done getting any saves for you. So, and Tommy Kahnle might be pitching in like the fifth inning for the Yankees. So, these changes they matter. They're not things you think about. Like the White Sox are kind of just sitting there like, okay, now what? We have nobody on our team. So I'm sorry, White Sox fans, for the baseball you're gonna have to watch the next couple months. All right, let's go and shift gears. We'll talk about some other non-trade news. That would be one of the bigger stories was Carlos Correa, who is going to be having surgery on his thumb. He re-injured it the other day. I think he's going to miss at least 6 weeks is what I saw first. I think that is the time frame there. But Correa is out for first place team that is, leagues ahead of everybody else. But the Astros shortstop situation is something to look at. It's something to see how well they can perform without their MVP candidate. So what are your initial thoughts on Correa's injury? What does that mean for the Astros?
A bump in the road. I mean, they have so many other guys in that lineup. Correa's certainly gonna. I mean, we talked about before we started the show that Marwin Gonzalez has been playing there the last couple of days. I mean, he's a quality player. He's not Correa, obviously, but I mean, when I think Springer and Altuve and those guys are gonna basically keep him afloat. I mean, they have such huge lead in the division that's not gonna matter. They're by far the best team in the American League. I think, I don't think they're gonna collapse. Basically, that's the big concern. They're not gonna collapse because Correa is hurt.
Yeah, and I think nobody's really worried about the Astros, but I'm sure people are worried about their fantasy teams down a shortstop like Correa. So, and it's really kind of weird because, the alternative, normally you can look to whoever's going to be filling in there for another option to pick up. Marwin Gonzalez is already owned in like 80% of, ESPN leagues anyway. Like he's not really a go-to option in most cases. So I feel like it'd be a good idea for me to throw out a few names anyway that are available that could kind of fill that void that I think are in good shape going forward. One that stands out to me is, Javier Baez, who's hovering around 60%. And, people are underwhelmed by him, but he still does put up pretty decent fantasy numbers from like a category perspective. Like he'll steal some bases, he'll hit for power. And his batting average is higher than I thought. He's hitting 275. So he could be an interesting guy there. Brandon Crawford's not owned at all, but he's somebody who could just be consistent for you. Brad Miller is currently not on the DL, so if you think you need some extra power, he's another guy who is still shortstop eligible, who could give you some help. Hasn't been great since he's been off the DL, but that could change quickly. It's he hasn't been around for most of the season. I think a lot of people forget about him. Yeah, those are some of the big names there. Addison Russell for the Cubs also is probably not going to be as bad as he was in the first half. So I would give him a good look too. He went 4 for 4 today against the Braves. What do you know?
They didn't play the Braves today.
They played. Who did they play?
They played yesterday. They have an off day today. They have an off day.
Gotcha. That was not today.
That was the last game.
That was close. Jose Reyes is another guy, and I just want to say, I don't think Jose Reyes is worth adding. I have to say it.
Paul DeJong.
Yeah, Paul DeJong too is another guy.
Eligibility very hot, unproven, but very hot.
Yeah, he's got some pop. He's got 10 homers and basically the blink of an eye. So.
Well, and here's my question about Reyes. I'm assuming if you're smart, you're not going to dump Correa because he's hurt. He's going to come back at some point this year. Would it be worth maybe having Reyes there, riding out this hot streak, and maybe kind of weathering the storm if he reversed back and waited for Correa to come off, and you can always just dump Reyes?
Not particularly, mostly because with streaky players, and Reyes has been around a while, and Paul DeJong, for instance, is a rookie. We don't know. You just kind of assume that he's going to have some sort of regression coming here or there. But, especially with Reyes, I don't trust the health. I don't trust, I just don't trust him to keep doing this. He could go 0 for 4 for 6 straight days for you. And I feel like guys like that are not types of filling guys you want. Go ahead and choke down Brandon Crawford for 6 weeks, but at least he's gonna do something. He's not gonna tank your batting average, even though he's been hitting pretty poorly lately. That's not who he is. He's been picking it up recently. So a guy with the less streaky track record is the guy I turn to normally. So yeah, I think that's my take on the whole shortstop situation. What's interesting here, looking at this, Sean Rodriguez is actually playing again. He's healthy. He's playing for the Braves. And he was looking like he was going to miss the entire season, even before spring training. He was in, I think, a car accident where he hurt his shoulder, and that looked like he was going to be out the season. But he's back now. He was progressing pretty well and quietly came back to the team. Hasn't had a hit yet, but he's a guy who'll steal bases.
All water coolers be warned. He's back.
Yeah, hydro water coolers and hope for the best. But he's actually a legitimately good option if you see him potentially trying to do anything. I don't even know if he's going to get regular playing time for a team like that. But he was a guy that was very, very valuable not too long ago. So, yeah, that's I guess that's basically all of the shortstop update for most of the league. So I'll also mention that Starling Marte is back. 80-game suspension he faced. He hasn't opened any eyes so far, but he's a really good player. He needs to be owned. If he's available in your league for whatever reason, you need to add him right away. So, yeah. Anything else on Marte? Any other notes?
Nope.
I feel like most of the recent history of guys getting suspended for steroids, like Melky Cabrera and Nelson Cruz, that had relatively proven track records regardless, has been pretty successful, even though they've obviously not reached their peak form. So I think, obviously logic would say he's not going to be as good because he's not juicing anymore, but I think that would be a gross oversimplification of his talent.
Who gets more drug tests the rest of the way, Starling Marte or Eric Thames?
Eric Thames, for sure.
that was a very easy one for you guys. Okay, let's All right, let's move on to our last little segment we're going to do here today. We're going to do Here to Stay or Keep Away, as we do almost every show. And hold on to your hats, guys. There's a couple names that I'm sure you haven't heard of before today, or maybe you have if you're very diligent. But the first guy we're going to talk about here is Brent Suter, a pitcher for the Milwaukee Brewers. Yeah, I could be lying, and you guys wouldn't even know the difference. But he's been doing a decent job so far for the Brew Crew. 3.09 ERA. WHIP is nothing to marvel at, 1.31. But he's a guy who's getting starts for a really good team, like a pretty good offense. For considering what they are. So I could definitely see some wins in his future here. He has not given up more than 4 earned runs in any start this season, and he's actually been. That
was a relief appearance.
That was a relief appearance. So he hasn't given up more than 4 runs in any start this season. Back in April when he was in the pen, he did have a 4 earned run game, but this guy's looking like a good option unless they trade for another starter, in which case I'm basically immediately going to stop paying any attention to him. This is more of a deep league pitcher. I don't see much of much upside here.
And the thing is too, he's not necessarily pitching all that deep. He only has 4 starts in the year. Granted, 3 of them are his last 3 games, but the middle 2 were 6 and 6 in the third, where he threw 97, 93 pitches, gave up 0 and 2 earned runs respectively. But in his first start, June 13th at St. Louis, he gave up 3 earned runs in 4 2/3 on 5 hits on only 87 pitches, 2 strikeouts. Last one was 17th, which is Monday against the Pirates. 4 2/3 again, only 2 earned runs, 2 strikeouts on 70 pitches. So he has 2 quality starts out of his 4, but the other 2 are decent starts that were cut short, seemingly.
My biggest qualm is that his home run to fly ball rate is absurdly low, which is 3.4%.
He's given up 1 home run so far this year, and that was in that St. Louis start.
He pitches at Miller Park, which is a notorious hitter's park. I mean, that's just, there's no way that lasts, especially in this season where every seemingly mediocrely hit fly ball leaves the park. I don't see how that lasts, and I think, like you said, like statistically, nothing else is like out of this world. But I will admit, like his FIP and BABIP numbers are pretty impressive. I would agree with everything I said. He's more of a deep league type of guy, but you know what? Sometimes there's the kind of guys who win you the league, who just get you the results when you are hitting the home stretch or in the midway of the season where you just need to get those points. I mean, if you have a lot of acquisitions, have space, I mean, you need, it's fantasy. It doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah, and I find it really funny because most years when you hear these names pitching for the Brewers this point in the season, it's not when they're in first place and actually having a formidable offense that's going to get their pitchers wins. So that's a different case here. He could definitely pick up more wins. He's 1-1 right now in his short time as a starter, but I think the Brewers might be in good hands here. Like with the rest of their team, I think they're in good shape.
Well, they have lost 5 straight, and they're only a game up on the Cubs now. So,
wow.
Well, Pittsburgh did a number on them. Pittsburgh destroyed them in this last series. I don't think Milwaukee's just gonna fall off the planet, though. Like, really?
Not necessarily, but I mean, this is a team that there was no talk of they could surprise like this. This was out of really nowhere. So
I think
they do have a good offense. If they do trade for a starter, like you said, that'll hurt Suter's case as a pickup. But I think in terms of the actual team, they need a starter.
Yeah, I think, Sonny Gray is a great fit for this team. So I really hope he does move. His value will go up quite a bit, switching leagues, getting new teams to face down this stretch, especially, and Suter's value evaporates completely at that point. So another guy we'll talk about, another young gun here in the NL Central, is Luis Castillo for the Reds, who is 100-mile-an-hour flamethrower extraordinaire for the Reds. They seem to have quite a few of those coming through, but he is, he's been okay so far. He's got like a 3.86 ERA and a 1.26 WHIP. And he's obviously a strikeout guy with the way I described him. He's, 43 Ks in 35 innings. Definitely going to be a consistently more than strikeout per inning guy. So far, the control hasn't been too much of a hindrance. He's had a couple starts where he's walked like 4 or 5 guys, but he's not doing it consistently anyway. Like he's
had a walk every game he started.
Okay, but like one walk is different than 4 or 5 walks.
Oh, I know.
And especially for a guy like that, throw in that kind of heat. I think expecting a walk per game is not too detrimental. He does seem to go about 6 innings. I think like the problem obviously is, keeping the pitch count down. When you throw a lot of pitches, trying to get a lot of strikeouts, it's going to be hard to get deep into games. And obviously he's pitching for the Reds, who are not going to get a lot of wins. But strikeouts are really valuable, and he has got about as much talent as you could imagine. I think the rest of the season outlook is not so interesting, just because he is on the Reds, and there's not a lot to like about the Reds in general. But as a potential keeper going forward, where do you see this guy? Do you have any comparable
I'd be shocked
nature
if he's a starter going honestly in his whole career, because his FIP is terrible. Honestly, it's 4.79 compared to his 3.41 ERA. He gives up 22% of his fly balls are home runs, which is also pretty poor. And with that control too, I just don't see him as a long-term starter personally.
Yeah,
I'd be you just don't see guys of that makeup really. He's young, but he's not super young. He's been traded twice in his career. I think he has electrifying stuff, there's no doubt, but he has a lot of work to do, in my opinion, before he's a really good fantasy starting pitching option, because, he just hurts you in so many ways.
What if he just Luis Severino's everybody next year? There's always
that's different, because, I guess Luis Severino was a pretty highly touted guy when he came up. I don't know how highly touted Castillo was personally, but he was traded twice, so I doubt he was too highly rated. And either the trades were blockbusters. And I think the Reds, if you're not elite, that's a tough case to sell for a while. Because the run support is there, but you're gonna get no wins for at least another season. But if you're in a really deep league, you can't hurt. But if you're really trying to compete, I don't really think he's my guy. Not the kind of guy I personally like in fantasy. I would say the only real way to justify him is strikeouts.
Yeah, and even then, if you're going to justify him by strikeouts, if you're doing say our league that we're in is strikeouts per 9, because he's had 6 starts since he came up on June 23rd, and because he's gone so short, he's thrown at most 6 2/3, and even that was 113 pitches. He doesn't have more than 9 strikeouts in a single game. So if you're in a league where the actual number of strikeouts counts, then because he goes so short and is a little bit wild and gets his pitch count up, his strikeout numbers in terms of just counting strikeouts aren't exactly what you would think he would have. But he does have good strikeouts per 9 because he strikes out a lot of guys for the short time that he's in games.
Interesting little question here that I'd ask is, would you rather own Luis Castillo or Blake Snell the rest of this season? Or neither?
I wouldn't really want either the rest of this season. But I guess
if you needed some additional help.
I'm really not a fan of either of those guys at the moment.
Yeah.
Not impressive.
I think.
What about Brett Suter? Would you
The answer would be Snell, but the fact that I don't trust that he's going to even stay up the whole year is what breaks it.
What about Brent Suter? Would you rather have him? Nobody's impressed by anybody.
Yeah.
All right. Well, how about this? Would you rather have Luis Castillo or Sean Newcomb the rest of the season? He's the next guy.
I would rather have Sean Newcomb.
Okay. Because Sean Newcomb really did kind of explode his last couple starts, not in the good way either. Is it possible to explode in a good way? Anyway, his ERA is shot up to 4.86, and his WHIP up to a very, ugly 1.51 or what numbers did I say? 1.54. Yeah, the last 3 starts he faced Houston, Washington, and Chicago. So I'm not reading too much into this because of those lineups he was facing, but nonetheless didn't look very good. It looks very hittable even for a guy that throws upper 90s with the kind of curveball he has. Are you guys worried at all? I mean, are you worried enough to cut ties with him already?
No, I think it really depends on what your expectations were. He's more of a dynasty guy, but very talented, very athletic. His FIP is only 4.19 compared to his 4.86 ERA, which means he didn't even pitch that bad to those teams. His home run to fly ball rate's fine. His strikeout percentage isn't outstanding. It's definitely gone down, but I still think it's pretty promising. The only thing that's actually worrying me is his control has definitely gone down a little bit after a pretty impressive start. But I'm a big fan of him, and I'm on the Farbo Newcomb train. He convinced me pretty easily, and I just like what I see.
Well,
But for this year, I mean, I think compared to a guy like Castillo, the main justification is that the Braves are simply just a better team. So there's going to be more win opportunities.
Yeah, well, next start is not going to be one of those. He's facing Kershaw at the Dodgers on Sunday.
You never know.
You never know. Kershaw could give up like 4 runs in 5 innings, and Newcomb could go 6 with nothing. It could happen, but I don't know how I feel about that because the Dodgers aren't really lefty killers either. So, I think the Dodgers have an edge.
Well, they killed Rodon the other day.
Yeah, I mean it's different now, especially with Justin Turner and.
Well, Kiki Hernandez is hitting well right now. Chris Taylor's been a surprise this year. The issue last year, I mean, just a side note on the Dodgers. The issue last year where they're like, the Dodgers can't hit lefties is because their second team always played against lefties because Dave Robertson won't hit like Peterson or even like Grandal at times against lefties and like maybe even Gonzalez. But like he sent out the second team to face lefties, and so you had worse hitters facing the lefties, which is why they were bad last year. But now they have so much depth in terms of hitting that I think that's not as big of an issue this year. Just side note on the Dodgers, just get that out.
Yeah, well, I think, he's going to stay up with the Braves. He's going to be a valuable pitcher for them. The Braves are trying to make the push, but his schedule is not going to get much easier is the point, especially in these games that mean a lot. So just keep that in mind, too.
I think as far as Newcomb's concerned, if you're in a really deep keeper league, I think you could stash him. Maybe you don't necessarily
even not so deep of a keeper league. I think he's worth the stash. Possibly.
Yeah, like if you if he has these type of games coming up, like he's facing the Dodgers or like Washington or Chicago, you say, okay, don't necessarily need to play him this year, but I want him on my team to be able to keep him.
Yeah, I think. I like highly touted prospects as much as the next guy, so he still seems like he's fine for the most part.
I think he's the best guy that we talked about personally, but maybe I'm biased.
Probably. He's the most highly touted, but even for the rest of this season, it's hard to say who's going to be the best going forward. We didn't talk about very, high-end names today, but these are some names that you may have never heard of, and now you probably have heard of if you listen to this. So that's what we try to do. We're here to inform. So that is it for all our main stories today. Just a side note, Bartolo Colon might be making his very last start ever in Los Angeles next week if he doesn't pitch very well. He is, of course, pitching with the Twins right now. I think he signed a minor league deal and came up to start some games. And I think there's a story that he is considering retiring, depending on how he's able to perform with the Twins here. So, we're wishing Big Sexy the best of luck. If it is his last ever start, at least it will be at a National League stadium, so we'll get to see him swing the bat one last time. Maybe he's got a little more magic left in that bat, and we'll see another homer. One can only hope. So that is definitely going to be the main headline on Monday. I'm going to be keeping a close eye on that one. So yeah, that is going to do it for our podcast today. As always, feedback is very, very much appreciated, and we would really like to answer any questions you have, related to fantasy baseball. You can send us your questions. We will answer them here on the show by tweeting us at WPB_podcast, or you can email us at warandpeacebaseball@gmail.com, or just leave comments anywhere you're listening to this. That would also be a way to get us the questions. We'll find them, we'll answer them any way we know how. I also recommend you check out our website. Link for that is down below. We've got all our podcasts and articles there now as well. I recently released an article on Gerardo Parra. If that is for some reason of any interest to you, go check it out. And we're releasing all kinds of articles, fantasy and otherwise, on the website as well. So please check it out.